cycle and the world's gone mad. Let's teach others the beauty of the land. My heart will be right as we come full circle. I'll give thanks for the miracles. North, south, east and west, I feel so blessed. I hope I'm moving on, walking on.
Hi everybody, welcome back. Woody here. We're on another discussion here about spirituality and how we got there. And I have a special guest today. He's one of the few people that's still around from when I got sober, and we have a lot of memories together about how that happened, and we'll probably get into some of that. And but anyway, I just want to get right to it. This is my friend Joe, and Joe, I'll let you introduce yourself and a little bit of background if you want, and we'll go from there, man.
Okay. My name's Joe Pratt. I don't know what kind of introduction. Woody and I have quite a history together. One of the four of us, anyway, three other brothers and myself that grew up in recovery together at the same time. At least 29 years ago. And so, what a privilege it is for me to even be here with him. When you think that you're never going to be able to do something or see somebody, and you can, out here, it's pretty amazing to me. So, miraculous, if you will. So I don't know what kind of introduction that is, but we can get wherever we're going.
Yeah, it's all them big spiritual words. Miraculous and awesome.
Yeah, non-coincidental.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I think I've never really told my story on this podcast. A lot of people I know are watching. They already know me or heard that story or whatever, but I probably have to repeat it sometimes. But anyway, both of us were in prison and from 89, 88, and all that was a result of the way we lived, right? Mm-hmm. And that's hard to admit that my best thinking landed me in prison, but it was true. And saved our lives probably, and but I just didn't think so. Neither did you when we first got there. And so eventually they let me out. And when I got out, I felt alone because of the recovery support that we had there where we were at, and we got free. I got free in that place, man. It didn't bother me no more. And so then stepping out here was like, whoa, how do I rebuild this circle? And AA was a good place to go. And then I got to travel around to I'll just call it Indian country, and people can correct me if they want to, but I traveled around Indian country and started to rebuild that recovery support. But you had to stay there for a long time. That was kind of hurtful to me and some other people we started this out with too. But now you're out, and that was after 32 years of being out there. And all I can really think of is, man, I'm glad you got the chance to be out. Because now what are you going to do? And that was the question I had when I got out. Was, now what am I going to do? Well, I decided I got to keep doing what I was doing in there. It was obviously working, and what I used to do wasn't working. Didn't work, and it failed. And so I think just let the cat out of the bag right here. And you've been out for how long now? Not
9 months.
9 months. So, you're, it's a heck of an adjustment.
Clean clothes.
Yeah, clean clothes. Yeah. It's, they used to tell me before I got out, you're going to experience culture shock. And I couldn't even fathom that. It was like culture shock. I know how to live out there. You know what I mean? I didn't.
Right.
You know what I mean? But until that hit me, after getting out for a little bit, I was experiencing culture shock, and in many different ways too. Culture shock with food, culture shock with structure and discipline, and culture shock with recovery, especially because going to a meeting out here was way different than how we conducted our meetings in there. But I had an open enough mind to go, oh, okay, and that's where I fall. Where do I fit in? And I know that's what you're going through, and you know, I'm glad you're out here. But you want to tell us what that transition's like?
Well,
so far,
I think maybe I'll just go back and start a little bit earlier, and then maybe I can get to that part.
Yeah, sure. Fill it all
in reverse or something, just so in my mind anyway, of I guess the experience, strength, and hope of it, and because you'd shared about the getting to prison part, and today I can admit an awful lot of stuff that I couldn't before. And I belonged there. It wasn't an accident. And so, the last few years of being out, I don't call it freedom, because I was in bondage, worse than anything. So before 1989 anyway, I'd run it into the ditch, and lost wife and kids, and all through what I like to think is, possibly alcohol and drug abuse. But the reality is that it was my thinking that, even when I was sober, I was a train wreck. And so, and it just, I ran it into the ditch. I went further and further down that rabbit hole to where, and I say saved my life. When I was arrested, and more than one ways it saved my life. But going to prison and having that opportunity, it's not really there anymore like it was when we were there, of having the professionals that were there then. I know for a fact that they saved my life. And I think it's probably relatively safe to just start name dropping and, say the Mark Gornick's and the Dave Oglesbys, and those guys saved my life. And credit to them, because as you know, we were not the average run-of-the-mill kind of junkies. And so it took some powerful people to get to where we, to come meet us where we were and pull us out of that. And so, and I think part of the beauty of that too is in the recovery component of it. And I share that story all the time of, I was probably 29 years old, 28, 29 years old, and I was sitting in maximum security prison with 120 years fixed. And, doing the math, that was never getting out. No matter how I added, subtracted, multiplied, didn't come out right. And so, I was still using drugs, drinking squawky, and I didn't have a problem, with 120 years fixed, being 29 years old and dipping squawky out of a garbage bag. It was a clean garbage bag. And so,
that's a plus, huh?
Yeah, that's the bright side of it. And but that went on for 4 years, incarcerated, of drinking, using, just being that kind of dude. And and I had a taste of spirituality, leaning over toward that a little bit, is that I'm of the Christian faith, or whatever that is, non-denominational something. But I remember as having that the vision, if you will, of all of those incremental key points of my grandma, reading the Bible to me as I was too young to go to school. And I can remember sitting on her lap and, the red letters in the Bible and stuff. But, even going to church or whatever, all that stuff never panned out. I didn't have any kind of a connection. But, through that process of county jail and, being told that, now you're being charged with first degree murder, something kind of sunk in my spirit, if you will, of that wasn't my intention in any way whatsoever. And it got so far out of control that actually took someone's life. And so somehow that was, it got me where nothing else had ever got me. And so, fast forwarding that is that I had some sort of spirituality or something, but, I was still using, something wasn't connecting. And so, those volunteers of Jack Krager for NA and Mark Gornick for AA and, in the legacy and to honor Mark, that dude never gave up on me. I was really hoping not to cry through this, but I am a big puss bag, so I probably will. That dude, even when I go to work at CI and he'd come in as the program manager and, somehow he'd be coming to work when I was going to CI, Correctional Industries, and he'd say, hey man, we got an AA meeting over here on Wednesday nights, or why don't you come over to this alcohol drug education program, or we got this, and on a weekly basis, somehow he'd be there at the same time that I was. And just kept on like bird dogging me. And so I'm probably all over the place, but I'm okay with it. So, to tie in that spirituality component of it is that, until I got into programs, started to go to AA, took the alcohol drug education program and stuff like that. In the beginning I thought, well, this is what was missing, halfway through that, whole vision, ADEP, of course, but halfway through that program, I went, man, this is what's been missing. I didn't know any of this stuff. And so I thought it was education, of course, self-knowledge. And so I realized that I was in bigger trouble than I thought. And so I signed up for the next one, which was Thinking Errors Orientation. And, fortunately, Mark was the one who was facilitating that. And, man, he started in like he wanted to help me. And I didn't need any help. And, man, he pulled my covers in there. And I didn't much care for it. But halfway through that 2-week class, I realized the education wasn't going to fix what I had. And that there was a problem deeper in whatever he was talking about, in some sort of belief system or something like that. The way that I believed and the way that I thought showed up in my behavior, and it was not only unacceptable to society, but most everybody around me didn't much care for it. And so, I realized that I was in some pretty big trouble. And it was all educational variety of, not in a first step of, the desperation of a drowning man, more like intellectualizing that I had a problem, and then with me always it takes forever for me to internalize it. And so, but the cool thing about all of that for me is that in this process, the path was cleared in a way, and then coming in at the same time or similar time with you, Kelly, Scott, and now all of us are out here, which is kind of remarkable in that sense. But having Kelly out here too is pretty cool. So that being said, is that I don't know as I would be able to be sitting here if it weren't for my brothers in this process too. And I look at it as being a sponsor to other people, and I've watched the dynamics of, it's a lot different, having a parent-child relationship with my sponsor, and that's one dynamic. But having a sibling relationship with my brothers in recovery is a whole nother story, and I think that's one of the reasons that it really works. But so. I guess back on that track of I used for another 4 years and then got into the recovery arena that was available for us at that time. And, leaving correctional industries and coming over to Whole Vision Treatment Services and, becoming a facilitator and stuff it was a pretty big step in one direction, but any one of those things that we were involved in probably would have killed a billy goat. Working the 12 steps with a sponsor and that sponsor, that was pretty tough. A lot of people couldn't pull that off. But then having him as a boss in Whole Vision and they're, 5 days a week, questioning your thinking on a pretty continuous basis and processing thinking reports on the board, not just in, cognitive self-change, which we were involved in too. It's like any one of those programs are pretty tough, and we're doing all of them at the same time, and not in a boasting sort of way, but it kind of tells you just how how sick we are or were.
Don't you think that was a trick? Here you're going to jump in the deep end of this pool with no life preserver, but you better start learning how to swim. But yeah, three major programs, start them all on the same day, and I remember that. And
that's not normal. That's like us in the sense of is that I in the culture or the world that I lived in, and the junkie stuff. I never dipped my toe in the pool and went, let's try one of these. It was like try 4 of those, or drink till you can't drink anymore, or smoke or snort, whatever it was. I didn't really dabble very much in crime or fighting or anything. It was pretty much all in. And ironically, that's, the recovery component turned out the same way of, if you're going to become a facilitator, then you're going to need to have a sponsor and work the steps, and you're going to need to live on the therapeutic tier, the residential CSC unit, and you're going to, be here facilitating. All these components are right there in this, long-term inpatient treatment program. So, and there's not, again, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging about it or boasting about it, but we're probably the sickest of the sick, because other people just doing one of them, they had a hard time trying to do one of them. And I quit many times, believe that. I quit 1,000 times in my head, and I think 3 physically I quit. And, it was too much. I walked away. And then I realized that the only thing left was the alternative, which I'd already had, and I didn't want any part of it, and so I always came back. So, tying in all of that is that path, or, that road to recovery, or I just have to say that I've been blessed, 100-fold in the people that were there and the people I grew up with in recovery, and, I just know that there's been a pivotal person in every single step of this process. And, to me, it's pretty remarkable to have that opportunity. So.
Yeah. So, it's always hard to explain and put into words, but as you just put it right there, and I believe I have the same experience, that this all kind of started with a huge crisis. I don't know if that's a great word for it or not, but and a traumatic experience. But those guys that you mentioned, they often would remind me, hey, the crisis was against all the victims you left in your wake, you know what I mean? And it's like, oh yeah, you got to encompass all that. But then the next thing that happened was kind of opportunity, which was awareness. So those guys were good at, let me make you aware of what one is. They weren't calling me nothing.
Yeah.
They weren't calling me a terrible person or a junkie or an alcoholic. They were presenting what one is. And then the stupid thing is I'm sitting there identifying, oh yeah, well, it's me too. And they were a little light on the story, so it's like, I went a little further than what you're explaining here. Yeah, but they just kind of made the point, you know what I mean? But
the incredible thing is that, to me, looking back on it now, there was no judgment there by those, helpers. There was no judgment, and yet I kept defending myself.
Yeah.
And I love how you put that, is all they were doing was presenting the case. It's just like, here's what it looks like, and I'm defending myself because they're talking about me. And, they're not talking about my behavior. They're talking about how messed up my thinking and my beliefs were. And I don't necessarily need to keep on coming back to that part, but even today, and 29 years of sobriety, it's not about the drinking or the using or the lifestyle. It's about my beliefs and, which set of those beliefs am I going to reinforce?
Yeah.
And you'd mentioned something earlier, and it's like the transition. Well, I shared this with a guy that's still in on the phone one day. I was in the grocery store, and he asked me, well, how's it going? I said, it's a little bit difficult because I can't use the coping mechanisms that I used to use before I went to prison because they don't work. But I have that history, and I have that in my head of, how I used to function. And so then I have, 28 years or something of these spiritual principles applied in prison, in that environment. And I functioned really well, I think. I mean, I would have to say that it was pretty successful because the parole board let me out. I don't know, why, but I'm not going to question that. I don't need to revisit that. But the thing is that applying those principles out here is still different. Maybe not harder, maybe not better or worse or whatever, but it is definitely different. So that, and I don't think that I had a typical transition. I don't know what a typical transition would be, but I was blessed with an opportunity to interstate compact to Colorado and be with my mom, who was my biggest cheerleader, biggest supporter. But then 2 months later, I think July, August, 2 months later, she passed away, and that was a pretty tough pill to swallow. That I'd been waiting all this time to be there for her, and she passed away, and so then it was like, well, now what? In the sense of, and that's happened more than once. Then now what? So the surrealness of thinking that you're never going to get out of prison, to actually being out of prison and then not believing that you're out of prison. It's like there were 2 months at least of just being surreal. Like I remember I traveled back to Boise and did a lot of traveling in that short amount of time, but came back for a 2-week pass, and I walked out of a Mavericks or one of those convenience store things at 9 o'clock at night. My buddy was getting gas in the car, and I walked out with a couple of sodas or something, and the doors opened for me, and I walked out into the parking lot, and it was a beautiful summer night, and I started crying. It was like, I have the freedom to be able to go into a store or purchase something and walk out. And, that's a pretty big deal. And there's also, not to leave out the people, I have a lot of victims of the crime, of that lifestyle, and the crimes that I committed. And even my children are victims of me, and, a lot of family members. Everybody that has ever known me before were victimized. And so even people I didn't know were. And so, that freedom, I was free in prison, like you mentioned. I'd never sensed that kind of freedom before of freedom from the bondage of alcohol and drugs and even from the bondage of self. And so, transitioning out to here, I still have that freedom, but it's a different type. And now there's, this moves real fast out here for one thing. And I don't know what it's supposed to look like. So all of the stuff that I thought that it was gonna look like when I was there, fantasizing about all of this stuff, and maybe someday, like half of my brain said, "You're never getting out of prison. Quit toying with yourself and get used to living here." And the other half of my brain was saying, "You need to be prepared because someday you might get out of prison, and you don't want to be behind the eight ball, so to speak." And so it's kind of a battle that's been playing on for a long time. Doesn't look the same as, always got this super optimistic perception about what it's going to look like, and then you get there and you go, "What? It doesn't look anything like that."
Yeah.
And so this is part of it, is that it doesn't really look very much like whatever I thought it was going to be.
Well, before you get too far, I think so. It's hard to define culture shock. It's like, well, what do you mean? What is that even going to mean and look like? And it's too hard to explain. But last few minutes there, that what you were saying that is the culture shock that I'm experiencing, and it's no way to build like a skill to bat through it, but to know who I am. That, I guess, that is the skill. Is I have new shoes, new pair of glasses, and I have a vision of wanting to act a certain way.
Yeah.
And we got taught all that kind of stuff, but in practical application is to get in the situation.
Yeah, I mean, you can't use it until you're there to use it. Like, I had a debit card in prison in Minnesota, and you could go to the vending machines and you could slide in a debit card. So for prison, that was pretty advanced. From coming from Idaho to Minnesota,
Huh.
and that was pretty advanced to have a debit card, and you just put money on it and you just used it. But out here, having a debit card, like one time, when we were headed to Colorado, day 2 of being out of prison, my mom's like, "Why are you buying water? We got water in the car." And I said, "Because I can." That's why I'm doing it. Because I got a debit card in my hand, and I can go into that gas station or convenience store, and I can actually just pick that thing and purchase it and come out to the car. And so just to experience that very thing right there. So there's been a lot of those of, just trying to experience something. And, one thing that I think is neglected, on my short visit of 9 months is, maybe I won't lose my train of thought, but how fearful it is to make a mistake. And I don't think that I haven't heard a lot about it. Maybe it does get talked about, but I still have and have had a lot of fear of making the wrong choice or an unhealthy choice that I'm going to have to try to clean up. Because, for a lot of years, it's been about paying attention to what's coming at you. And, you learn after you've been T-boned in the intersection a few times, and you go, "Hey, man, I need to use that peripheral. Let's get out here where we're doing this and not this, so that I can start seeing the stuff that's coming." And because after you get T-boned in the intersection a few times, you go, "It doesn't work for me. I need to start paying attention to the side streets, so to speak, and start trying to anticipate what might be coming without, getting up into that, the brainiac of, the grouch and the brainstorm."
Sure.
Because that's a dangerous place.
Do you think that's a little bit of a guidance system?
I do, and I think that there's some healthy and unhealthy in that. Of, there's some fear. It's also stifled me a little bit in some of the decisions because I have fear of, is that the right decision to make? Because I can't see where it's going. The other part of it is that it is a safety mechanism too of, paying attention to what decisions I'm making because I don't want to go in reverse.
Sure.
And I shared this with a PO that I had in Colorado. And he was down there. It's like, I never saw him. They never came to my house. I had no contact with him unless I drove down to their office to pick up a travel permit. It's the only time I ever saw him. And which isn't a bad thing. It's just that they're pretty busy and they got a big caseload and they didn't care about me. And he started talking about these rules and stuff, and I signed them off, and I was really specific about these questions. And he said, "Do you have any more ridiculous questions? And I said, yeah, I have a whole bunch of ridiculous questions. I got one shot at this. I'm not doing a 2 to 5. I got one shot at being successful at this process. And so I still have that. I shared that when I transferred back up here, with the PO parole officer that I have right now. I shared that with him. I said, I don't have any other option other than being successful. I owe it to the victims. I owe it to the commission. I owe it to myself. I owe it to anybody and everybody to be successful at this transition. And so, I'm hopeful that that's it, and also to pay attention to that, how much fear, because I can't function out of being fear-driven, but I also need to be cautious about the decisions that I'm making, because there's, again, ramifications to those decisions. So can't be creating any more victims.
Yeah. Well, I really liked the concept being instilled in, I'll say both of us, is extremes. And so you can take any one of those things. Like fear is a good one. So is there a healthy fear? Mm-hmm. Yep. If a fear stops me from immediately reacting and allows me to come up with a response that is measured by pros and cons, then that's a healthy fear. If it's an extreme fear, then I'm probably going to make, bad decisions and mistakes anyway. So I really appreciate those concepts being driven home to us, because if we set it for has to be excellent, has to be perfect, we're going to fall short of that every time. So then we end up going back to an old belief system that allows us to just react so that what's happening in the moment goes away, even though it creates all this other conflict that's going to follow.
Short-term gain for long-term pain.
Yeah. I didn't understand that concept at all, but
I don't need a quick fix or knee-jerk reaction or any of that kind of stuff.
There's plenty of time now to give something some thought, and unless you're about to get T-boned, like you said, and then you might not have a quick enough response for that anyway. But
preparation is the key to that too.
Yeah.
Is being prepared for it, and so that's part of it is that there's as has been said, there's no emergency worth a poor decision, and so I haven't found anything that yet in 9 months anyway that I can make better by a poor decision. And so there have been some decisions that I had to make. I went to Michigan and helped my sister and brother-in-law out, and that's when my mom drove herself to the hospital, and when I came back, she was on life support. And I was like, I'd rather just go back to the house and just let somebody else deal with that. That's not really, by then, I'd been out of prison for 2 months or something. And I wasn't ready for that. But, I had to put on my big boy pants and be the adult, and because my brother and sister were in Texas. And, there's grandkids, and, there's a lot of people involved, and none of them were there, and I was the guy that was there. And, that was a pretty tough decision to be the guy holding the phone, FaceTiming with, my nephews and my sister and brother. And, I'm the one that's in the room with my mom on life support, and we're all making the decision, whether to take her off from it or not. And, those are, that's grown-up stuff. And, I like to think that maybe I've, made the right decisions, and I was pretty cognizant. I love that word that we use, and we grew up on that. But I was very cognizant of the people involved. And I asked my brother and sister before I ever moved the camera around to where they could see our mom. I said, you might not want to see this. And so, that for me, I really appreciate the amount of recovery that I had, that I could be able to be thoughtful to them about the last, vision that they have of her. They could have kept the one that they had. And so, it's a decision, and I made it clear that this is something that you might want to think about before you do it. So, and before you ask me to do it. And so, it was rocky. We'll just say that. But the beauty of it for me is that I can't say that. All she was really waiting for was for my brother and I to get out of prison. That's what she was waiting for. She was tired, and she'd fought the good fight, and she didn't need to be, fighting it anymore. And so, pretty grateful, which is kind of strange, but pretty grateful that she even hung on and put on a really good act until we got out, and then she decided that she was pretty well tired. So in that story, I guess, is that was the end of her journey, but she is still just as much a part of my life today, whether she's here or whatever. So, but it really, I think that helped solidify the decision-making process that, and I think I shared this at the meeting the other night too, that, a lot of times the responsibility that I have to the other people around me and the people that I've sponsored over the years, and whoever all those people are that we don't even know, but a lot of times just having that responsibility has got me through a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't know how to get through. Short of, leaning on, I got a huge responsibility. And I don't know if that's healthy, but it has definitely got me through some sticky points where I'm not sure what else would have worked. So.
Well, I mean, that kind of brings us to the topic, which is spirituality is connection. So I'm kind of doing this for a couple reasons. One is, what is that? Is it there was a time in my life where I thought that was some magical, mystical, as a spiritual person. You know what I mean? And I grew up in the 60s, so did you, but people with flowers in their hairs and the hippies and all of that created a weird concept of what spirituality was. But I think I think I'm learning that I can get to that place every moment of the day without hallucinogenic drugs and all this stuff, which is what we were taught when we were young. We want to go on a trip and get some spirituality. And so I had a bad belief and vision picture up here of what that even was. So when you lay out what you just laid out, it's like for our listeners, not everybody's had this experience of going to jail or prison and having that happen so they could get some awareness and what have you, and start to build something new. But it doesn't really matter what it is. It's like you find yourself in a place in life where this just isn't working no more. You can start to look for that understanding and awareness and a teaching of what that is, and then as you explained, from that awareness, the aha moment that I think we both got at one point, it's like, okay, that's what one is, and then almost the motivation of, I don't want to be that no more. And then we needed some skills. And then that's probably the longest process for me. It was is that because I can only do it incrementally. It's like, okay, I want to tackle this problem. Here's how I used to act. Here's my belief and vision about that, and that has to be changed. But I didn't know what to replace it with. Right. And so, there was a learning there that needed to happen about, what are you supposed to do? And that was pretty sick feeling too, about not knowing, like, what's the proper thing to do? Yeah. You know what I mean? And I just had no clue. Well, and, I remember, Mark, we're talking about, is the main person that helped us both for sure. That guy would say, you keep trying to come up with somewhere to blame that crap on. And he goes, I got to tell you, you can't go to the judge and say, because of my upbringing and my dad or whatever it might be, the people around you and what people did to you. And 'cause I had some terrible things happen to me when I was a kid, you know, and he goes, the judge ain't going to care what you went through. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's concerned with the behavior you're displaying. And it was that he had to do that a few times for me, because I walked away a couple of times going, man, you've never been in this situation, so you don't freaking know, you know what I mean? So, you know, for people that might be tuning in, it doesn't matter where you start. You're starting from a place that you're not happy with anymore. You get some awareness, then you got to learn some skills, and then eventually those skills start integrating into every day of your life. I always like that. You might remember this, the growth gauge.
Yep.
And so we start out doing the wrong thing for the wrong reason, right? And I could understand that.
Yeah.
I did everything I wanted to, but for the wrong reason. It was all for me. You know what I mean? It was to keep you out and change me and blah, blah, blah. But then I was a little bit even pissed off at a couple of them guys that were helping us, because what they did was they gave us some damn information that challenged, you know,
my current reality.
Yeah. And so it was like, then I started trying to do the right thing, but for the wrong reason. I was doing the right thing so I wouldn't get in trouble.
Yeah.
I was doing the right thing, hoping I won't get caught. Things like that. So, but that's kind of the process. It's like you can't just jump from doing the wrong thing for the wrong reason to being a spiritual person. And we'll get to what that even means in a minute. But so I started doing the right thing for the wrong reason, and that's where that programming came into effect, because I didn't even know. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I didn't know it was for the wrong reason. I didn't know that. So all that process that we did, and really how those professionals set it up for people like me and you to challenge each other instead of them challenging us, that was even
brilliant.
I don't even know if we could ever recreate that again. But anyway, what that helped, I always talk in me, but we went through this such together that I'm saying we, but so we began to be able to transition into doing the right thing for the right reason, and then that was uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Because it was still challenging.
It's what was expected of us.
Yeah, it was expected of us, but it was still challenging the old belief system. I hope nobody's watching me do the right thing.
Yeah.
You know, any type of deal.
Or maybe I'm hoping that they are, because I picked up that paper towel off the floor when somebody else left it. Maybe somebody saw that.
I always had this picture of a couple of uncles. It's like, if my uncle knew, he would whip my ass, you know. And so anyway, but then that became comfortable, and then that last stage is to do the right thing, because now it's who you are, and there isn't this big fight of whether to do it or not. Right. And then they call that spirituality. Yeah,
it's who I've become now. Right.
So the spiritual walk isn't without mistake. It's with the ability to recognize that I've made a mistake, or I'm about to, and to be able to stop and come up with a response, and instead of a reaction. Yeah. And it seems like I should do that all day.
I mean, that it's not, you know, I really was challenged with that, of changing things from mistakes into spiritual lessons.
Yeah.
Like, you know, a lot of times it was, I remember when, you know, we try to say the right thing. And as soon as we started saying the right thing, then we were challenged on, look, just changing the verbiage doesn't change the attitude.
Yeah.
And so then now it's like, oh, really? Another level? You know, now I have to do it with the right intent, or spirit, motive, and intent. And so yeah, to me it fits in with the same thing of that growth of, you know, hopefully we become the very thing that has been, I mean, it was modeled for us too.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't just, you need to do this or something like that. It was modeled for us. And the change agents used to say that, I've given you the information, I've modeled the behavior, we've given critique, now it's your turn.
Practice, practice, practice.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of phenomenal, but eventually you got to get to the place where, how do I put that? Well, you might not have ever seen this before, but so there was a bumper sticker that said, "What would Jesus do?" Mm-hmm. I know you've heard of it. But, the thing is that there are in that last stage, there's somewhere there where we got to connect to a power greater than ourselves, because I'm reading it in people that are acting right. I think I learned just as much from their teaching as I did watching them walk the walk of their own life.
Yeah.
And so I didn't grow up that way. I grew up in a culture that was different, and so I remember the one guy that was helping me. He said, "Look, you could use whatever you want as long as it's inspiring." And so I had one grandpa that was very traditional, and he did everything by what he said. So if he said it, you watch him do it too.
Right. Yeah.
And always drop your tobacco, pray for your food, this and that. And we made drums and things like that. He did the same thing to every drum as we made one, and it was to bless it and all that kind of stuff. And so he would tell us that's what we got to do, and then he would do it. You know what I mean? So, like, to this day, I would ask myself that question, well, what would Grandpa do here? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then, and sometimes it's still a challenge because I know what Grandpa would do, but it's still challenging what my mind first comes up with.
Right.
So I don't know about you, but occasionally I still get the very first thought to deal with something is from the old world. Mm-hmm. And I'm just getting quicker and quicker at going, no, we're not going there. This needs to be handled in a loving way or whatever. Right. And try to use that language, and then it changes, and like every time someone needs help, my very first thought is the burden of it. Oh, right. My God, I was going to cook dinner, you know what I mean? And I can quickly make that go away and go, wait a minute, what if the window's barely cracked and they don't got another chance? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And that language changes what's going on the inside. And then you become motivated to go, and you may not even help that person. I have no idea if I've ever helped anybody.
Right.
I really don't. I mean, I've given it my best shot 1,000 times, and but we aren't the change they need.
Right.
We might be the sounding piece or whatever. But I'm glad those guys that helped us were the sounding board at the time, because we're basically in a system that said society's done with you, and
get
in
comfortable.
Fact, I remember all the ridicule they got, from the powers that be, that you ain't never going to help them guys. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I can't even imagine how hard it was to come to work every day for Mark and Dave. And,
took a lot of flack.
Yeah, they took a lot.
Yeah.
Correct.
And that reminds
from
me
their own peers.
Yeah. It reminds me of the spiritual principle of help is in the receiver, not in the giver. And so, I have no clue in conjunction with what you're saying is that, I've just tried to be available. Yeah. And, failed miserably several times. And, other people say, man, you've helped a lot of people and all this. And it's like, well, they must have wanted it. Yeah. Because, my brand of help is not appealing. Been accused of being confrontational more than once. And so, I didn't get that kinder, softer, gentler way that you and Kelly got,
Quit it.
I got the broad axe in the chest. Mentioning those correctives, and that was kind of when you were talking, it reminded me of, all of the thinking errors that I have or the distortions in my thought process. There's correctives to every one of those, but I have to be the one that chooses those correctives.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
And so then, still, my first thought might be in error, because you're talking about adolescent stuff. You're talking about a belief system. Like one of them that I really struggled with is that, I don't know how far I want to get into this, but, as a very young child, I watched my dad with, his wife and 4 kids in the back seat of the car pull into a department store and go for a parking spot, and somebody pulled in to that parking spot in front of him. And he put the car in park and got out and pulled that guy out and beat him down in the parking lot for taking his parking spot. And my dad did that in front of all of us. And that was a problem-solving mechanism. And so I watched it work over and over and over again, and then I implemented that problem-solving technique, and I watched it work short-term for years upon years upon years. But in cognitive restructuring and, the 12 steps in the programming, I said, my dad learned that from his dad, and it didn't work for him either. And it didn't work for my dad, and it didn't work for me. And so trying to find something that has more power than that to plug it in to take its place, that's a pretty challenging task, because that's really powerful. And so the first thought, that we may have is generated from an impressionable person, young person. And now today, I have to challenge whatever that first thought might be. And like you say, a response to it instead of a reaction. So, as I've said before, 29 years of recovery just means that I have some longevity to today to be able to make whatever that decision is today. But today is the 24 hours that I have. The next right decision. The next right decision. And so, or healthy decision, hopefully.
Yeah.
Which then brings me here with you.
Yeah. And then we can't. So we've created a laurel that we can't rest on as well. And so, I know that, we both know what happened to some powerful people in our lives that got the laurel, they started resting on it, and then, they're no longer with us because of it.
Yeah.
That I learned a good lesson from that. I was like, don't ever get on that pedestal.
Yeah.
And because I'm not the, you know what I mean? As a result of attempting to help thousands of people, I'm still sober.
Yeah.
And I have no idea if anything got past to them or not, because that ended up becoming their own path with some awareness. And, they're the ones that had to go on and learn the skills and, make the change, practice. And so, we're, have a lot of people in the audience that may have never had these experiences at all, still want to try to relay that it doesn't have to be that extreme.
Right.
But what we both can say is this, I don't even know really how to put it. This, what happened to us on an extreme scale, worked. You know what I mean? Whether it be the 12 steps or cognition or, you know what I mean? All this kind of stuff. And relying on a power greater than ourselves, which we both had to seek. What does that really mean? Like I often say, I kind of understood who I was and where I came from and what the Great Spirit was as a youngster. And I look back, all I can really determine is I was there, but I wasn't connected to it. And so now at this crucial time in my life, I had to try to connect to it. And because it's not just knowledge. I had the knowledge. I wasn't connected to it, and it didn't infiltrate into my soul or whatever you want to call that. But so there's people out there that are questioning that very thing right now. And when we talk about this prophecy of, we're in this late stage of this long winter, but we're also in the beginning stages of this new springtime that have two different energies. A real harsh energy and a real healing energy. And if you're not on this path, there's people questioning, how do I get on it? And if you're on this path, it's how do I keep fortifying this healing energy while this is in place and going on right outside the door, and or on that TV or the internet, or almost everywhere you look, you're going to get something about, politically incorrect, whatever it is. But I don't really like going down them roads at all, because it changes the energy of how I interact with you, or how I interact with somebody else.
Yeah, I heard somebody the other day say, man, this world's going to hell in a handbasket. And I said, that's interesting, because my grandpa and grandma were saying that in the 60s.
Yeah.
It was going to hell in a handbasket then. And so, how do we deal with that? And, that's part of what I love about that prophecy, too, is that, I heard a term of, be the change you want to see. And so, that's pretty key, is that all that stuff can go on. I don't watch the news. I don't really have any interest in it. I stay real low key on the internet and all that, because I don't want to be negatively influenced by things, because I know where those extremes lie. And so, I need to stay someplace in between the ditches. If I start clipping mailboxes, it's kind of hey, you should probably get back on the road,
It's not a tightrope.
It's not a tightrope. You'll find it's a huge plateau.
Yeah. Otherwise, I'd fall off every day. But
yeah.
The elder Don Coyes, he's well, I heard him say it once, but then I heard him say it a bunch of times, and so it kind of sank in. But he's like, this spiritual path isn't a rope. You don't have to try to, it's a big wide road. And but I remember when he said, he might have been sharing this with an audience too, or something like that, but I'm pretty sure he said it to me once. And but he said, I often questioned, like, what is a spiritual person? And got in this program. I think he's been in the program since like 78, something like that. But anyway, he was questioning, this program's supposed to be turning me into a spiritual man, you know what I mean? And he was questioning whether that was happening or not. So he went to this one of his elders and said, okay, you got to tell me what's a spiritual person, and that old man, he told him, well, a spiritual person is someone who falls down every day and gets back up and asks God for guidance once again, and they get rolling again on that road. And that could happen 2 or 3 times a day. And Don told me, he goes, hell, man, he goes, I guess I'd been a spiritual person the whole time, because that's exactly how my life was going. But that's also why I felt like I wasn't one, because the belief and the vision, picture I had of what a spiritual person was is somebody who's never deterred. Yeah. And that's not true. And
we just don't know when they're getting pulled through a knothole, is all.
Yeah,
we're not the ones watching that.
Well, it was kind of a relief to me, because it was like every time I made a mistake, I was throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I'm never going to be this.
Yeah,
all or nothing. But the other thing that helped me too is, like, after that, in I think it was 1995, Time magazine did a big write up on what's that lady's name?
Mother Teresa.
Mother Teresa, yeah. And I think a lot of people have this vision of, she was able to follow the spirit all day long, no effort or anything like that. But it was funny that they did this whole chapter. I can't remember how many pages it was, but and I had the magazine. I got the subscription of it, right? So when it came in, and I'm reading it, and it's at one point it says, here's the life of Mother Teresa for a full day, right? So wake up, and so anyway, the very first part of it is waking up and saying her prayers and turning to the side of the bed and getting out her journal and going over her character defects. And I was like, what? So Mother Teresa had like defects? And at the time, we're all working on like, what's a defect? You know what I mean? Right. Making a list of our defects and all this kind of stuff. And that information, along with what Dawn had told me, was like, look, we're not striving to get to perfectionism because we got to keep learning. And then another elder, told us that, what makes an elder or, a spiritual person with integrity is that person is 95% student and 5% teacher. So it's like when it needs to be. And so it's like being a sponge, and it's all within the sponge unless you squeeze it, then some will come out. Mm-hmm. And I've kind of never.
That's the pressure that's applied too. Like when you're sharing with other people, I watched the other episode that you had with OJZ, and you have some extreme people on here. He and I probably, I'm not sure, no challenge, no competition, but the catalyst for people, whatever that catalyst is, it could be a shopping cart hitting your car door in the parking lot. Whatever that catalyst is it comes back to one of the sayings that Don Goya said that has stuck in my brain since he said it, is that I didn't know what I didn't know. But then I got some information, and now I can never not know. So whatever that information is, whatever that catalyst is, whatever that prompting, we can call it a problem, we can call it a defect of character, we can call it whatever we want to call it, but there's probably a reason for it that could be catalyst. And it doesn't take what you and I have gone through in order to get there. Hopefully most people don't have to go that far down into the rabbit hole before they turn around.
Yeah.
That's, as they say, you can start over, a million times a day. And so it's just turning around.
Well, Mark and Dave and even Jack and a few other people, remember they used to tell us, you could help someone before they get to too extreme of a bottom.
Yeah.
By sharing, and that kind of motivated me. It's like, man, I wouldn't wish, hitting granite on anybody if they didn't have to. Right. And but there are people like me and you that have to go and then sit there and beat our heads on it before we go, okay, I give up.
Right.
What now? And for that would be, we can witness it all the time that, people come to the rooms and things like that, to gatherings, and they stopped before it got to be the worst ever thing, and everybody has that ability. But,
and that was one of the things that I was
thinking that's about. Genetic. That me and you just gotta. That'd
be great.
It isn't like help wasn't offered all along the way of that whole. I had counselors and psychiatrists,
school teachers.
I was in juvenile hall and all that kind of stuff, and there was help at every juncture of my troubles, and I didn't accept any of it.
That's why I wanted to be careful about how I shared that the other night in that meeting, but mentioning that. You and I don't have that relapse experience of going back out. And a lot of those people in that meeting, they've gone back out 2 or 3 times, whatever that is, right? And I was like, I've never experienced that because my bottom was extreme, and I've been blessed with not going back out. I dabbled around and, but not while in recovery, and so the thing is that hopefully that those relapses or whatever, hopefully they live through it and come back, you know. Again, whatever that catalyst is, you know, if it takes 2 or 3 times or whatever it is, you know, far be it from me to be questioning somebody else's.
Yeah.
You know, just like the mental health medication or whatever. I just was raised by somebody who eliminated that option of going to medical and getting some mental health medication. You know, not that I didn't need it, or probably still do, but he made it very clear that, you know, for a guy like me, that was just another crutch. That was another
Sure.
easy way out for me, not for whoever those other people are. He knew who I was, and he knew how to work with me. And, you know, and I held that against him for quite a while, and you and Kelly, about, you know, the way he worked today. It baffles my little brain of to how he could, in the same room, work with Kelly and say, so you're going to feel a little pinprick, and then there's going to be some anesthesia, and then what we're going to do is that we're going to make a small incision, and then I'm going to pull out a character defect and show you what that looks like, and then you'll probably want to do something about that. And I'm like, how can you talk to him like that, and then you turn right around and say, and you asshole, hit you in the chest with a broadhead axe and say, look, that's the problem, fix it. But he knew how to work with me as he knew how to work with you, and that, to me, still is phenomenal as to how, you know, somebody can work with 3 complete different people and know exactly how to reach each one of us. And then how, you know, he shares that I'm not helping you for you, I'm helping you for who you're going to help. And, you know, I share that quite a bit about I can only reach the people I can reach, you know, but, you know, if you will put this into practice, then you can reach the people that I can. And so, you know, that's what I was sharing with that girl. If you're still alive, you're alive for a reason. Because I tried, you know, just about everything to not be.
Yeah.
And so, pretty remarkable, again, as to what we were, you know, what was instilled in us. So.
Yeah, I don't remember it that way, but he was gut wrenching to me. I mean, that guy was almost blind a few times. It got pretty heated a couple, 3 different times.
Yeah.
Especially the very first time I met him. So it was, you know, lifers only, invitation, blah, blah, blah. It was like a horseshoe. And he comes in and he's starting, this is not even a program. He just wanted to talk, you know what I mean? And a bunch of us went there. And Jerry Brazell, and, you know, all them people that were that. And so he goes around the room with what's the most important thing to you in the whole world, right? And he started on the opposite side, but I was at the end and I was sitting by him. I was sitting, and you know, everybody's saying, "Oh man, my kids, my freedom, my this, my that," and you know, I said my kids, and he goes, "What'd you say?" And I said, "He's my kids." He goes, "Well, how many kids you got?" I said 4. And I just threw it out there. I got 3 boys and a daughter, and she's the youngest. And he goes, "Man, you're an effing liar," you know. And all my head could do was, everybody's watching me, you know what I mean. And I could hear their thoughts. Get him, Woody. You know what I mean? But I mean, it was another 5-year sentence to do anything. And so, I mean, I just sat there fuming.
Yeah.
And after about a minute, which seemed like forever, he looks over and he goes, "Well, hold on. I could be wrong here." He goes, "Maybe your kids are the most important thing to in the whole world." Mind you, I'm sitting in prison with forever, and couldn't even fathom the end of my sentence, you know, and he says, you know, "Maybe you do love them." And he goes, "Would you agree that something has overridden the very thing that you say you value, and you acted on it, and now you're in prison doing forever?" And And so, I mean, this invitation was for lifers only. And so boiled down to a 20-year sentence or more.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we even got in there. Gary Carr and I can't remember all his, Bill Knight and all them guys. And I was the only one being picked on at the moment, you know. It was like, and so I kind of understood what he meant was, well, yeah, now, and he says, well, let me ask you this: who's raising them kids now? And I was done.
Yeah.
I was completely and utterly freaking done because I had just had a phone call conversation with the middle boy, and other boys didn't even want to talk to me on the phone, you know. And I'm like, well, it was summer, you know, how's it going? You know what I mean? He's like, oh, summer's pretty cool, you know. Dad bought a new four-wheeler and he's letting each one of us drive it, and I drive it the best. And you know, Dad took us fishing the other day, and we're gonna get to go later tonight, and blah blah blah. And it's on and on and on this story about his summer, you know, and he wasn't talking about me. Yeah. He was talking about Dad, and he wasn't talking about me. And a little bit of it made me think that he didn't even know who he was talking to on the phone.
Yeah.
Collect call, and all that, and you know, I didn't have no words. I kind of hung up, and then I go to this thing, and he's saying that crap to me, you know, and he was right. No, someone else was raising my kids, and they didn't even know me, and I probably caused trauma that they haven't even really experienced yet. And now them kids are 39, 38, 35, 33, and they were horrendously impacted by
negatively
by
impacted.
me. Yeah. And
Well,
not from
better.
stuff I did to them so much
What
as
you didn't do.
was being ripped out of their lives, and I did that.
Well, he did the same thing to me.
Yeah,
so
he did it to everybody. I know that.
I'm a victim of his most important thing in your life.
I'm unique because he did it to me.
Yeah, first, I'm sure. He was just practicing on you to get to me.
Probably. But yeah, I mean, that was a
ready to cut right there.
Change.
I don't know how else to do it other than
Change. Yeah, so I think I mean, this conversation kind of lays out in an extreme fashion anyway for our situation that this stuff works, and it doesn't matter how you get there. I mean, we talk about the things we're involved with, like the 12 steps, and you know, an extreme cognition program that was pretty intense, and things like that. But it's not the only way. I mean, there's people that can do this through their higher power, and just having well, yeah, I'm quoting the program if I say psychic change, you know, but that's basically what, that's what it ends up being, you know, and just curiosity, I think. There's a lot of curiosity. I'm on a couple of sites where, you know, people are asking questions. Well, you know, my great-great-grandma was Native. How do I look into that, you know, and there's plenty of people on there, and there's some ridicule, and there's some people that give her a good straight, you know, forward answer, and things like that. But it just shows you that curiosity is out there, and you know, because there's a lot to this prophecy that, you know, I don't want to make a 5-hour long video on it, so I just covered the highlights of it. But you know, the prophecy says that during this time, people will start to seek to heal, and you know, one of the messages to Indian country is that at some point, people looking into their roots to finish their identity, and you know, are going to be seeking, and the red direction needs to open up and begin to share, you know, this basic knowledge that we know. And so I know a couple grandpas that they would say, look, I don't ever want you to hear you say this is native teachings, you know, you're not part of it. You'd say, no, these are natural teachings that every two-legged on the earth can learn. and follow.
Let me tie in right there if I can.
Sure.
Interrupt you because that's what I do. But because I was watching the prophecy that you did, and which this morning, we had talked about this yesterday of coming and doing this interview or whatever today in this conversation of hanging out together. And I made a point when I read this morning. I made a point of taking a picture of it because it's not in my head. But from many different teachings, creator, whatever, wherever we're talking about, I just found it ironic that this morning this is what I read, and I'll share. Do not neglect your gift, which was given you through a prophetic message when the body of elders laid their hands on you. And so, excuse me. And so then that was that portion. And so I flipped the page to be diligent in these matters. Give yourself wholly to them so that everyone may see your progress. Watch your life and doctrine closely. Persevere in them, because if you do, you will save both yourself and your hearers. And I was like, kind of interesting that I didn't read that yesterday, but I did read it this morning. And for me, that tied into the prophecy that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Of it's pretty important, and I guess I'll go back to that. The platform, I don't know what that is, but where you and I are, and the years of experience and coming from where we came from, the hearers of that, they don't have to be where we were. If you can get a grain of anything that we're sharing, that we talk about, it could be just enough to get you more interested in that adventure, in that search for whatever it is. Again, it doesn't matter, what your circumstances are.
Yeah.
I just really like the idea of, the winter to spring. There's so much, I read this out of the Bible, which is ironic because, I have my ancestors come from the Algonquin tribe. My grandmother was the one that read the Bible, was Algonquin, which to me was almost a bit of an oxymoronic, it's a paradox.
Yeah.
But that her spirituality was not limited to any one thing. And that was an old lady. And she wasn't limited to any one thing. Maybe through years and wisdom and, having 12 kids, that may have had something to do with it, and a whole bunch of grandkids. But for me, the beauty of it is, and that's one of the things that I've always loved about you, and that we've been able to blend whatever our spirituality was, and it has never, that I know of, ever been any kind of stumbling block, any kind of barrier for either one of us to be able to have whatever that is in that spiritual journey. And that it is still, the Creator has still seen fit to bring us, hopefully it's not full circle, but at least we've come around the bend to where we are today, of being able to spend time with each other. And when both of us are at a meeting like we were the other night, and it's not just what's coming out of my mouth, but in a sense I'm reinforcing you and you're reinforcing me, and that's part of that support that we talk about too. Is we're bringing such a legacy of these people that can't say anything anymore, and yet we're the ones saying it for them. Because basically, I'm just repeating Don Coyas and Mark Gornick and Dave Oglesby and Mike Young and Bob. I could go on and on and on about. We're basically repeating that in our own words. The spiritual principles are still the spiritual principles, and so to me, that's a big deal, if you will.
Yeah.
that we have this legacy and we have this laurel that you're talking about, and I don't want to rest on that legacy, and I don't want to be, in this place, because that's where people are always falling off from that pedestal that they put themselves on. And I remember Mark saying that one time I was in the process of tearing him down off from the pedestal that I put him on. And he shared that spiritual principle with me about, you've put me up on this pedestal and now you're just in the process of tearing me back down off from it. And the cool thing is that I've been able to share that with the people that I've sponsored too. Is that what you've done is you've put me up on this pedestal and now you're in the process of tearing me down off from it. And so that's really helped me to understand that, having the right sized self, being, that big shotism that is easy to get because I had it before when I wasn't, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we were a big
Self-imposed.
shot. Yeah, I mean, we were a big shot, when we were in 8th grade or whatever, So, a lot of these spiritual principles to me are just being fulfilled on a pretty consistent basis, and hopefully, going to be able to reach some people that are ready to move into that next season and, find whatever that is for them.
Yeah, I have to say that a lot, and because nothing's really been reinvented in thousands of years. Spiritual principles, there's no new ones. If you have one, it's probably old, But I mean, I don't have any original thoughts.
Yeah.
I got everything that I understand today from someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be Don or Mark or some other elders that I've crossed their paths or they crossed mine at certain points and things
that
like that.
Can be their hand, that the elders lay their hands on us, just repeating their voice. And I heard that guy share that the other night about, I already know what my sponsor's going to say. And so I shared that with Mark one time, and I said, well, I already know what you're going to say. And he goes, that's pretty impressive because I don't even know what I'm going to say. And how do you know whether or not I got something new to add to it?
Yeah.
Man, and it shut that thing down for me about ever thinking that I knew what he was going to say,
I can still hear him.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it.
What are you going to do here? Yeah, well, I really appreciate you coming in here, and I thought maybe we could do a shout out to Kelly if you want, and
Kelly's of Olney?
Yeah, we just tell him, hey, buddy, and maybe we can get you down here or get you on the Zoom, and if they're taking care of them dogs, but it's okay, man. And but yeah, I mean, for him to be out, for you to be out, for me to be out, for that matter,
There was another guy that was never going to get out that, given the opportunity, and there's a spiritual guy right there, man, that he's helped a lot of people. I still hear about people that he's because we were together for a little bit on the yard after he come back. We were together for a little bit, and it was like, are you serious, man? We'd grown up. We weren't those dumb little kids that were in the program, trying to pull each other up or whatever, and we'd matured some, and we could actually be friends and have dialogue back and forth. And then he went over to ICC and just continued to be a powerhouse helping people, man. And, it's just so impressive to see.
Yeah.
So hi, Kelly. Love you, buddy.
Yeah, we love you, and we'll all be in a meeting soon, surely.
Yeah. Shirley's gonna be there.
Yeah, well, Shirley will be there.
All right.
So yeah, I think just to close this up, we can. Well, maybe we've already said it, but you don't have to have an extreme crisis happen for this to work, and there's all kinds of avenues here. But if you're in this kind of an extreme crisis, there's two people here that can tell you it does work and is capable of working for, our program that we're in currently says no matter how far down the scale you have gone, there's help through spirituality and higher power, greater power. And anyway, yeah, that's about it for today, huh? What do you think? And we'll get you back on, and hopefully Jack will be coming on too, and he could tell his side of the story about coming in there.
Yeah.
And having us swoop in on his meeting.
That's right.
But anyway, we'll be there. So, really appreciate everybody for tuning in. We need a lot of help to continue this, and it's mostly just in our hearts to want to even do this, and have some way to stay involved, stay connected in the spiritual realm of life, and to help as many people as we can, and we know a few people around us, and to stay open to receive help as well. And so if you could help us out here by subscribing and hitting the thumbs up button, and leaving us a review or a comment, and you got your coin in your pocket?
I didn't bring it. No.
All right, well, there you go. Just got a
29-year
chip. It's on his wall.
The light shining on the nice little display.
Just let Kelly know we got a 29-year chip the other night, and so if you can help out, and if you can just keep tuning in, If you got any questions, leave us a comment. We'll try to address that.
And anyway, if you need help.
Yeah, if you need help, for sure.
If you need help, make sure.
All right, everybody. All my relations.
Oh.
The sky's looking dark and the clouds look heavy. Might be wiser if I hopped in the Chevy. But I have a lot to think about. I'm gonna take a walk even if I get rained out. The sky's looking dark and the clouds look heavy. Might be wiser if I hopped in my Chevy. But I have a lot to think about. I'm gonna take a walk even if I get rained out. I'm moving on, walking on. So much going on I can't ignore. Just let that rain pour. Talk to my maker as I trek along. Hum with the birds as they sing their songs, and I'll keep walking on as the rain pours on. I'm moving on, I'm walking on. Close the world out for a moment of time, just a quick breath to clear my mind. Wind starts blowing and the rain's much harder. Leaves flying everywhere, the sky's much darker, and I'll keep walking on, walking on. Find some peace of mind with every step I take. Humming with the birds till my soul is sick. Look to the sky as the rain pours down. As it hits my face, I can hear the silent sounds. I'm moving on, walking on, walking on. In a new cycle and the world's gone mad. Let's teach others the beauty of the land. My heart will be right as we come full circle. I'll give thanks for the miracles. North, south, east and west, I feel so blessed, I hope. I'm moving on, walking on. I'll keep walking when I'm overwhelmed. Find my harmony in a different realm. All the while, know the answers lie within my hope. I'm moving on, I'm walking on, I'm walking on. The sky looks dark and the clouds look heavy. Might be wiser if I hopped in the Chevy. But I have a lot to think about. I'm gonna take a walk even if I get rained out. I hope